So yes, as I said earlier on, our topic is wealth creation through distressed property investment. And I also want to give a call out, obviously, to our virtual audience there. It's also wonderful having you guys online as well. And we also encourage everybody to engage and to ask questions, because this is also a learning session. And I think Daniel made a really good call. I'm going to introduce him now very shortly, to rather do a panelist format rather than have everybody stand up and just present slides and do a death by PowerPoint, as I would call it. Let's rather do a collaboration. Let's rather do a discussion. Let's rather engage and talk about wealth creation through distressed property investment. So on my right-hand side and on your left is Daniel Lombard. He's the founder of Assist Group. He has an impressive 35-year career in the property industry. And as you know, the Assist Group are an esteemed firm renowned for its expertise in direct real estate investments. So welcome to you, Daniel. Do I hand the mic to you? You got one?
Thanks, man. Yeah, thank you, Neil. I just want to say, if you are a real estate investor, please ensure that you get the digital magazine, Real Estate Investor Magazine, because it's really empowering information. It will keep you up to date with what's happening in the industry, etc. So thank you, Neil. We are very privileged to have quite a few years relationship by now. And I think thank you for you being here, because I think it's important for you to invest in yourself, get some information, grow your real estate investment information. And I think we'll be privileged to have a few knowledgeable people around the table here tonight, and looking forward to it, to share some of our insights. And we trust that it will really inspire you how to get involved in distressed real estate without always misusing misfortune of other people to enrich yourself.
Wonderful. Thanks, Daniel. It's absolutely wonderful having Daniel here, and he always punts my magazine all the time without me saying anything. So thank you, Daniel. And then, of course, our next speaker is Andre van Zyl, and he's a motivated and solutions-driven lawyer. Did everybody get that? And he has an MBA as well. And his specialities is commercial law, business strategy, and property law. And his core focus is on legal assistance and the provision of strategic initiatives to his clients. He thrives in dissecting complicated business problems. That's what we like. Problems have to be complicated. He also finds solutions, action plans, while constantly keeping the bigger picture in mind. Welcome to you, Andre. Do you want to introduce yourself briefly to the audience as well?
Thanks, Neil, and thanks everybody for having me. I can't really do better than what Neil did. So it's nice to be here. So my role tonight's the boring part of the legal structures and the correct way to structure your personal portfolio, and with the least amount of side effects, because every person and every person's strategy and what they want to achieve out of property investment is different. So, but we'll get to my part. But thank you for having me, and thanks for the introduction.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Andre. And then, of course, last but not least is Gerard van der Westhuizen, and he's the Direct Real Estate Officer at Assist Group. He has an illustrious track record of over 30 years in property investment, financial planning, and the property development sector. And welcome to you today, Gerard.
Thank you, Neil. I'm glad to be here. I'm the nervous one because I'm translating in Afrikaans the whole time to English, so forgive me. But I must say that for the couple of months that I've been involved in the group from the end of last year, I've learned so much. I always, in my certified financial planning, there's a segment, investments and so on. And I always wondered if the guys are really achieving their goals and retiring. And the second thing that I've seen over many years is if they earn 15,000 or they earn 150,000 a month, they don't save, they don't invest. I don't know why. I don't know if you've seen that with your friends and family. And that creates a massive problem. And when I saw the solutions that the Assist Group is actually offering clients, it actually makes up time, and it's definitely something to look at. And so I'm glad to be here. Thank you very much for having us.
Wonderful. So, right, you've met our esteemed panel. And so we're going to get right into the discussion points. And once again, I'm going to say to the audience, please don't sit there, be quiet. If there's a question you want to ask, please fire away. The whole idea is to stay engaged, to ask questions, and that's also for our online audience as well. Please engage, ask questions, fire away, and we'll do it on that particular basis. So we've run a series of events. We've run webinars. We've done also, this is our second live event. And so this one is wealth creation through distressed property investment. And it's unbelievable, if we look at where we're sitting right now with the sort of South African economy, we're not in the best space. And it doesn't matter, when economies go down, it still is the best time to invest is when the market is not good. So we should be doing the opposite of what everybody else is doing. Now, everybody else, and I just want to give a little bit of a pep talk up front to everybody, if you don't mind, Daniel, before we get into yours, to say that, a lot of people say they look at their bank account and don't have money, and we've heard all the things about other people's money. Find people got the money, find the deals first. And so that's what I want everybody to think in the opposite direction of what everybody else is thinking. Don't think, it's tough, we can't invest and all that kind of stuff. The money's there, the properties are there. We just need to go out and do the footwork ourselves to find those deals. There's lots of deals, lots of deals. Right. So Daniel, I still see you're trying to kick up the display. Are you ready to, I know you've got a slide that you'd like to demo for us, but Daniel, maybe, we're talking today on distressed property investment, and we know that most distressed properties go through auction procedures. And just recently, I actually he's on our latest front cover of the Real Estate Investor, Rael Levitt. He's very well known in this industry. He was an auctioneer of notes since 1995, and he was, let's call it, bust for ghost bidding, so-called, but was it ghost bidding or was it vendor bidding? And because he didn't face the media, unfortunately. So what I'm trying to say is that in the heady days when auctions were number one, the banks used to run to Rael Levitt and hand their property over and sell it within a day. But I want to talk to you about that process now, because it's changed a little bit, hasn't it? The market has changed, the bank's procedures have changed. So, and obviously in the daytime, not everybody has the time to obviously run around and check the properties and that kind of stuff. So Rule 46, how would you advise direct real estate investors to participate? And are there enough opportunities to participate?
Right. I think just on the first, I'm going to use just some slides to illustrate some information and so forth. I think the key is let's start with auctions. There may be guys here that buy an auction, and then I have to differentiate between, you get different types of auctions. These that Rael mostly did, and when he started in his initial days, it used to be me, him, and about two other people on the auctions, and that was normally the sale and execution auctions. And that is when a house gets repossessed by the bank, and they have to go through certain legal processes to actually sell that property in a sale and execution. Now, in this case, Rael at a stage when he entered the market, he actually did quite a lot of that on the Lefco, and he was very smart by doing it at that stage. And because nobody else advertised, if you know how a sale and execution work, it's actually a little small ad in the back of some newspaper which nobody picked up, and that type of thing. And he just published it like pages and pages in the newspaper. So people started rocking up at these auctions, which obviously made them less. When it was 3 or 4 of us, we buy them for 10 Rand and all those things, which I'm not so proud of today. But at that stage, I thought it was brilliant. And I think on the end of the day, the process had fortunately changed. So now with sale and executions, you can't go to a sale and execution, buy a property without there being a reserve price. And that reserve price is now set by the courts. Okay. So when the court have set that price, and a property gets sold on a sale and execution, you end up, if you bid on that auction and you put down normally a 10% deposit as well as the auctioneer's fees. So in that case, You would pay that money into trust and you'll wait. If you bid anything under the reserve price, you have to wait until the court reviews that offer. And it can sometimes take, well, it's supposed to take about a month, but I haven't seen any of that happening. I think we had kind of a record on one the other day. It was about 3.5 months. So that was the kind of timelines that your money lies in. You actually don't know if your offer is actually going to be accepted. So it just became a real slog to actually buy property like that. And so the question is, well, where do you get distressed property then? How can you buy it then? You know, now a lot of people got smart and they just use the address, got hold of the client, but all of them are just doing it for one purpose, and that is to go and buy that property at a discounted value, irrespective of what the outcome is for the real estate owner. We fortunately have totally changed the industry, and we'll touch on that a bit. So for us at the moment, it's about really doing a brilliant deal for all parties. Okay. And as we go through this, and then getting to your second part of the question, Neil, if you look at the numbers, and not a lot of people know the distress in our country. Okay. It's currently the mortgages for 30 days or more in arrears is 68 billion rands worth of mortgages. That is in arrears 30 days or more. 50 billion rands worth of mortgages, 90 days or more. Okay, just to give you an idea. So there's huge opportunity to obviously misuse it as well if you want to, or use it in the right way and actually make money by helping other people in the process. So I think then the second thing that a lot of people don't know is that our consumers at the moment, we're looking at about 25.14 million credit consumers in this country, and 10 million of them can't get a mortgage tomorrow. So they can't buy a house. And you only burn the country down when you can't where you don't have a vested interest in a country. So one of the solutions in this country is to provide people with housing, making sure that they get houses. And this is part of our vision. And out of that 10 million, there's about 435,000 of them that actually will qualify within the next year to 2 years to actually, on the end of the day, be able, if somebody walked that road with them, change their credit score, help them on the end of the day to have home ownership, you can actually do that. And part of our products, which one of our new products that we are launching, we'll touch on tonight, is actually one of that, where we purchase property at a different level. Then I think the need for that, I think between all that, just to give you an idea here, if you look at over the next 3 years, we only want to tap into about 2 or 3% of that market. That's more than 1 billion to 2 billion rands worth of investments. So guys, we need to fill these rooms and more rooms and more rooms to help these people and make money at the same time, as you will later see the type of products that we're dealing with. So is there enough opportunities? More than enough. We don't have the money to put together to actually help all these people. So I think it's a great opportunity.
Wonderful. Great. So, Daniel, so what do you guys do that's different? And you started off obviously talking about how the auction industry has changed and how the market has changed. And what is your approach to it?
Yeah, I think we totally disrupt the real estate investment industry as well as the collection side of things. You know, going to the institutions. We're currently working with 2 of the larger institutions in the country where they actually provide these opportunities to us, where we approach the owners, have a discussion with them, bring the new solutions to them, and then assist them in that way. So what we do from our side, if you look at those type of things that we're talking about, first of all, we help people retaining their homes. Now you'll say, okay, but how do you help a person that's already in trouble? Well, if you actually look at the type of opportunities, and we've got not time for that tonight, but if you go onto our website, which you'll give the website a bit later, you can go on there and actually see practical examples of these type of opportunities where people have actually created a lot of short-term debt or whatever the case may be. Some of them don't even owe a cent on their property, but they have 500,000 of short-term debt and they can't afford to pay that anymore. So then now, if they go to the bank to get a mortgage, they can't. So we just slot into that space, make that whole turnaround. You as an investor buy that property at a discounted value. We fix their credit score, make sure that everything works out for them. They buy their own property back whilst they're staying in it. It's the best type of tenant you'll ever get in your life, a client to actually look after his own property. Then obviously everybody is not recoverable. And we must understand that. And we will never from our side actually tell a person that he's recoverable if he's not recoverable. And in that case, what we do is we will fix the property, maximize the proceeds by selling that property to a third party, but buy him time, let him stay in the property whilst that happens. And then thirdly, obviously, as we discussed earlier, we have these opportunities where we help people to get into homes, which is part of one of the processes that we do have. Beautiful. Look at that. Wow. Let's give it a moment. Okay, so looking at the current side on the investment side. So what are we offering to the investor if that is the situation on the owner side? On the investor side, we talk about sustainable long-term solutions, not misusing people's misfortune. With excellent security, excellent returns, and a win-win for all. And then secondly, purchase property at 75% of market value. All cost inclusive. That means if there's any maintenance, transfer cost, whatever that is all inclusive in that price. Now, to be honest, not even sometimes at auctions, if you take in consideration the rear rates and taxes, all those type of things that you have to pay additional, do you always get the opportunity with transfer fees, all inclusive, that is actually 75%, not exceeding 75%. Well, you'll see one opportunity tonight, which you will say to me, no, this is not possible. It's too good to be true, Neil, that one. Yeah. So we'll deal a bit with that. And then obviously very important, people, we sit with investors that is credit rich, cash rich, and time poor. Everybody has got a job and do a job or busy every day. Not everybody like Mr. and Mrs. Kendall has got a bit more time, but most of us are busy in the day, and you don't always have the time to research these opportunities, and you don't always have the skill. And in that case, we are here to actually assist you as the real estate investor to actually do that for you. And then lastly, everybody has, I think, grew up and their parents told them to buy a house and keep it. It was a good idea, but good is the enemy of great. Okay, so tonight you learn a bit more about that. Instead of buying and keeping the property, there's far better ways to make compound returns whilst you're getting your money paid out and your profit made every cent, and reinvest that capital and profit. It's just an automatic sum, which Gerard will share a bit more tonight about and the figures around that. Thank you. I hope it addresses.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I look forward to seeing those deals at the end of the day, because I mean, every investor has appetite for seeing deals. And yes, there are a lot of deals. I mean, there's some alarming figures there. The 68 billion, the 50 billion, more than 3 months in arrears. And that just really draws a picture of what's actually really happening in the market out there. Okay, over to you, Gerard. I know you're very quiet. You come Afrikaans praat as you will there. Now, we've got an audience, obviously, in English. So obviously, Gerard, there's an investor checklist here. Now, investors want to get a good deal. Are you going to take us through that? What they need through that checklist to show us what they need to get a good deal?
Look, when you look at this, I mean, we've created this checklist. The first 3 is actually all about figures. You need to do the numbers right, and then looking at your risk and your security of that capital that you're investing there, and obviously the time that you need to spend. Where do you get your information? The knowledge you require. That is definitely part of your evaluation process. And then I think the last point in our checklist is, why do you actually invest? And that is where we think we need to just clarify. Not everyone is actually because on the first and most important one, and for those who hasn't been attending our previous webinar, the purchase price, as you know, is by far the most important. You buy your profit and your risk up front. And in this case, comparing the two, the national averages compared to Wealth Assist averages, most people go out there, they go to a developer or whatever, and they buy market price plus cost. Not one of the deals that we do ever is higher than 75% loan to market value, cost including. So that means that there's a 25% equity in each deal that we do. Now, for my mind, it said average, our average long-term deal is a 2 years cycle, if I can call it. There's shorter ones, but I mean, I've just created that word.
I'm just laughing. Most people say 2 year deals are very short term.
Yes, exactly. But that means if you buy at 75%, that means that for 2 years, your property on this one specifically that you bought need to, go down 12.5%, another 12.5% for 2 years in a row. And that's like, so that means your risk is very much lower when we speak about 75% market loan to market value. The second thing is obviously you need to look at your capital growth. On average, 3.5% to 5% is your capital growth currently on a national basis. We live in Cape Town, we know we're in a bubble, but the reality is this is the averages that is given when you look at the national property growth of properties. So, but with us, I think, and that's one of the major things you'll see here behind us, is predetermined returns. And we'll explain that structure for you. But on terms of the capital side, it is 5 to 7% per annum.
Maybe you can just share what the client when you spoke to him yesterday said.
Oh yes, the client we spoke. It was he's owning a couple of properties, and after we've explained what predetermined returns means, he said, "So what you're actually saying to me that it doesn't matter in which property cycle we are, my returns will be guaranteed or will be fixed almost, depending on the small percentages, but on average, it is what it is." And it's been pre-calculated as part of the structure that we offer to this distressed owner. The next thing is what we call the net rental yield. Now, I mean, the reality is if you look at a sectional title after cost, it's about 7.5% that you can get on a full title, 5.2%. That's after cost. But with us, you'll see that we do a prime plus 2. So in this case, with our current prime rate that we are in, it is 13.75% that you'll be receiving as a monthly return or rental income, if you want to call it that.
And a net yield.
And it's a net yield. That means after cost. So it's quite a different game that we're playing. I think this factor, the net yield on that level, is actually one of the changing factors why you want to do business with us. Now, looking at the risk and the security, I think, there is interest rate hikes, there is municipal hikes, rates hikes, there's maintenance risk. All of that is actually built in, but not for the investor, it is for the owner. So if you look at the risk on that side, it actually means that when there's an interest rate hike, like you had now for 12 months later, 4%, what happens with our clients, the actual monthly rental goes up. So this is the game. Now, we sort of getting to that peak now where we have to carefully do the numbers because it's actually getting more expensive for the owner. But that is how we protect the investor. And I think, looking at the landlord, that's what that one is saying. All the expenses in a typical buy-to-let is actually for the landlord, as you know. Normally you pay. If he phones 9 o'clock at night, say, listen, something broke, it's your cost. Now on our side, it is what we call a triple net lease, and that means that all the cost is actually in that rental agreement for that owner that has become your tenant. And then looking at the how do you evaluate? People go to estate agents, which is a good source of income. You buy programs, you go to Real Estate Investor magazine, and you learn. But at the end of the day, this is where the key is. And I think what we'll show you later on in the evening is how do you get all the information at your desktop, sitting right there, just spending 2 to 3 hours and evaluate if this is your opportunity that you want to do. We do I must be honest, when I sat for the first 6 weeks here and I saw what they do before they actually go to risk committee and then afterwards publish it on the website, I just couldn't believe it. It's actually crazy. But the reality is that is what they offer to the investor. And nowadays I can see the value in that.
Well, if I can just say, if you, the key is, why can we actually do that? Why can we spend so much time doing research on a specific property or whatever it is? Remember that we do it for everybody. You do it for yourself. I remember when I used to go to auctions, when I prepare for 30 auctions, and if I'm very fortunate, I buy one. So all that other time was wasted. And that is the risk, obviously, for you spending valuable time on the wrong things.
Yeah, and I think then one of the next slides will actually show you, because we most likely 90% chance that we will actually be able to assist this guy. So we spend the money because we know it will be in some direction. So it's not wasted on our side. And I think the last one is what we call impact investing. So, when you assist someone, you are really making a difference. You are helping that family. We secure the fact that they won't lose their home. They won't lose. Any one of you have been through an auction where the bank came and took your home. You always loses out. There's no doubt that you'll be owning the bank still, most likely after they've taken your house. So in this case, we call it making it a social change and assisting those families so that they can at least have a specialist team around them in that dire states. And we've got many investors who actually went through it. And now they say, where were you? But the reality is we are there for many. And this is where our investors also get involved in making that impact investing. Excellent.
So we've got our lawyer here, Mr. Andre van Zyl. He's very quiet, I'm getting a bit worried, Jada. Andre, when do we bring you in? Is he waiting for And it was quite interesting chatting to Andre earlier on. Obviously, we've known each other in the property industry being very small. We met each other up in Johannesburg and what have you. But for a motivated and solutions-driven attorney, we look forward to your So do you want to just elaborate a bit more? I'm just, first of all, Andre, are we going to hand over to you now? I know you've got some slides that you want to show us.
We can go through my slides now. It'd be great. So
you can if we jump into the specific products maybe first.
Okay. Would you like to first of all?
It's okay.
Okay. So let's just talk. Okay.
The reason why I'm quiet is people only use a lawyer when there's trouble. So there's no trouble yet.
The trouble's coming. Okay, so let's unpack the sort of how the investor can secure the investment, the process.
This portion, quite quickly. Yeah. I think one of the biggest reasons why this company is different is because they evaluate the individual as well as the property. Most other companies will go for the property because it makes sense to buy it. But we actually go through an extensive product. We call it a before and after budget. And we actually get all their finances, all their debt listed, and then they actually do a budget to see whether this client will be able to recover in 18 months' time. Because that's the key, determining on where they can go into the future. And then we look at the property. Is there enough equity in that property? And if that's the case, that means he will be able to recover. And then we put him into one of our recovery deals. And on the other side, he doesn't he doesn't qualify. We can clearly see he won't be able to, doing that in-depth budget, and he will not be able to get debt into the future. Then we assess the property. We look at, what is the market around that one? Can we just secure him, get the banks off his back, get him stabilized? We call it, some of the products is actually called a breather, so that we can, get all the phone calls from him and stop that process for him. And then we evaluate, look at the critical maintenance on that property, and then we go to market and sell the property immediately. So that's typically called what they call a flip. But in this case, actually in both cases, the tenant was the previous owner. So while you're marketing, while you're working, he's working with you to get these properties sold, or prepare himself to buy it back from you. And I think that's the biggest reason. I mean, if you look at the risk in terms of the current laws, if any tenant, comes for you or doesn't play along, and what the cost is all about that, suddenly you don't have that. They don't do that because in your contracts, you'll see that you are protected. That's 25% equity that's in that deal. Any losses is for their account. Any legal fees is for their account. So in other words, you are really protected in this middle section of the transaction.
Before you jump into the specific products, I think something that we haven't mentioned specifically is we, for instance, when you buy as an investor, you buy the property. So if you bought this property for 500,000, it's worth $1 million. In that case, the property will then, let's say, be sold on. We spend, call it 50,000, 100,000 on the renovations or whatever we have to do to maximize the proceeds. We sell that property on. Now, everything, even with a recovery, if he defaults somewhere in the process, that means that even if it's a recovery product or an on-sale product, the investor get a predetermined return, as we previously spoke, and anything above that goes back to that client. So the moment that is difficult, or if we don't cooperate or anything like that, he actually uses his own proceeds. So there's no sense to be difficult. And that's why we're fortunate over the last 9 years that we didn't have one court case around these matters, and the people just cooperate.
Yes. So basically, if you look at the different steps, and I'll quickly just go, in many cases, the actual distressed owner is selling his property to you. There's an actual transfer that happens. In some other cases, there's a recall being done. In other words, there's an installment sale. Now, our legal guy will just explain he gets nervous because it's good contracts, but there's real risk. But one of the biggest things about our installment sale, it is maximum for 2 years. So that reduces, but it's a certain transaction that happens. And then the security bond. If there isn't a transfer happening, there's actually a security bond. So all of this is happening in the deeds office. So that's why it's called direct real estate investment. And if it happens in the deeds office, that's where you want to be protected. We're not selling you any other structure as such. So I think, remember now, the tenant is in, he's got an option agreement that he actually signs, he pays for that. And in that term that we are actually recovering him, he's paying for that option. Eh? There's a monthly fee that actually goes down. And that option is what gives him the right in 18 months' time to say to you, listen, I have been recovered. I can clearly see that I can apply for a bond now, and therefore I will be able to buy it back from you. And that purchase price is where you actually then realize your profit, and that it's predetermined, that all the calculations is done up front with this owner that got into trouble, and he knows exactly. And we show that on the budget that he will be able to pay you, or buy the property back from you at that price. And if he plays the game and works with us according to that plan, it will work, and it does. So that's the recovery side. Daniel, you're welcome.
I'm just going to touch on the wellness side. I think it's very important because this is one of the key things this is the why in our business. That's why we are in business, is actually to take that tenant through the process, improve his credit score. So we've got a financial wellness team that actually works with a client on a monthly basis, making sure that we settle those debts, first of all, from the start, and then from there on, build his credit score over the time so that he can recover prior to the time that he has to repurchase within the specific term. Okay.
Oh, yes. Maybe just, is that slide? Yeah. So if you look at this slide, it is the audited figures of returns that was given or achieved over the last 10 years. And there you can actually see a gross return of 21.14% was done on the recoveries. And if you look at what the stand out for me is the COVID period from 2020, 2021, 2022. It's still averaging out on 19% that was given. So, if you survive the COVID cycle, you've got something good here. Our client is quite right in his assumption there. So when you look at now, we go through the process with the individual. We see that he cannot be recovered. We look at his property and we say, okay, let's go. But the banks is already there. Remember now, real teeth, and they actually come for the client. And now we say, so how do we stop this process? We do a calculation on that property and we bring the investor in, and he then, does a JV sale, or he buys the property, as you would see later. And we assess the critical maintenance. We prepare all the documentation to go to market. We register in the deeds office the type of transaction, depending on what happened. And then we, as mandate holders of, appoints a area specialist to go to market in that area, seeing that we're doing business on a national basis. And then he sells it. I just want to see, the back-to-back transfers is one thing. 90% of all the transactions is actually back-to-back. So there's quite a bit of saving when it comes to these deals at the end of the day. And again, you will then get your predetermined returns. Now, the other day we had one, it's a 6 months deal. And, if that deal goes off, it was a special, I don't want to actually speak about transactions now as examples, but I mean, it was a real sweet one. And the reality is, if that transaction goes as planned, in 6 months' time, the investor will get his return and he can go immediately into another cycle with another investment. And there you'll see the returns that was achieved over the last 10 years for the on-sales, also called flips for some people.
Yeah. And just on our on-sale products, for instance, and you will see by the example that we're using, if you invest 100,000, your profit is, let's call it 20,000, and that profit on that flip is a predetermined profit. So that means on that specific property, if you do the transaction within 6 months, the profit stays 20,000. The term is shortened. So if it was 20% per annum, it multiplies and it becomes 40% per annum, because you can do 2 of those in a year, that type of thing. So it's a fixed return for that 12 months, irrespective if it takes 3 months or 6 months or 9 months. Okay.
So if you look at the actual audited returns of the on-sales, there they are. On average, 31.42%. That was the gross return. You'll see there's a couple of ones, 2015, 2017, that was crazy. I don't know what they bought. We must go back to that. I'd love some. We actually have some.
It's a simple thing. You think, where in the heck do you get that right? How can you do that? Well, very simple. All that happened, we didn't charge the people more. We just sold the properties quicker. And at that stage, it was a seller's market. So it's a totally different picture. And that's what takes less time to sell. Whilst now is a buyer's market, and the people are more stingy and want to make sure they want to buy the right thing and bargain a lot more. And it takes longer. I think our average sales time at this stage, I think it's 114 days or something like that, where at that stage it was something like 69 or something like that. So it just gives you a different timeline.
So what this model is actually opening up is what they call compound interest. Interest as you reinvest more regularly compared to a longer term purchase of a buy to let, that type of thing. So again, if you look at the COVID years, the average there was about 27%. So it's real returns, and it makes sense to be in one of them as well. More cash orientated as well, where the other ones you can actually use bonds on the recovery as well. So just to position yourself when it comes to these ones. I think that gives us a good summary of the products.
Great stuff. Thanks, Gerard. And just to the audience here, just if you've got some questions, keep them in mind. We don't have to engage now. There's going to be an opportunity at the end of the presentation. So if you've got questions, get them top of mind, maybe write it down. Or if somebody has a question right now, we'll take that one too. Yeah. So we don't want to be quiet. So if somebody does have a burning question, we'll take that as well. And also for you, those of you online as well, please, line up those questions. I think this is really a very interesting product. I don't know of any other product that is in South Africa that offers this. I mean, doing a great deed. And yeah, so now I'm going to hand over to Haka Geka, as they say in Afrikaans, and because he's going to take us through empowering home ownership for non-qualifying individuals, impaired credit status. As you said, you're going to start looking at the situation where, you're the fixer, you're the solutions guy, not so. So Andre, over to you.
Thanks, Neil. So yeah, interesting. It's correct, as Neil said, we met, I think, quite a few years back, and it's interesting how the property circles reconnect. So it's very nice to see you again tonight. And thanks for the introduction. I am here to talk to you about you must remember, I will talk to you from the investor perspective. So there's also different kind of structures that you can use if you are on the business side of things. But tonight, I just want to talk about something that I'm quite passionate about and where I've helped people in a different scenario, not necessarily in a credit risk scenario, but in estate planning, and to make sure that they are well prepared one day for legacy for their beneficiaries. So unfortunately, a lot of the time I do get the questions where it's never too late. It's never too late, but it's later in the investment cycle where people start thinking about legacy and taxes and estate planning. So basically, there are different structures from an investor point of view. The most commonly used one is the natural person. That's you sitting here. That's maybe a person sitting here tonight or in the past of their life, and they saw, I've got an opportunity, and they invested in it as their personal ID number. So my personal view for that is, Gerard, what do you call the quick flips? As general advice from my side, I would suggest that for the quick sell, the on flipping scenario, where it's not necessarily the holding of a property, but it's a scenario where you generate cash. Because the reason for that is it's quick, it's easy, you've got a lower capital gains tax rate as an individual, and typical lawyer, I always put negatives as well. So, so you get. So I just want to highlight also, there's the negatives about it is estate planning, obviously, because if you hold, not necessarily with the flips, I'm just saying in general, if you hold property individually, the estate planning, the issue with deductible expenses in your property venture, once it becomes bigger, it's difficult to explain in your tax submissions on what is deductible, what is you, and what is you in your property business. And obviously, a big thing for all lawyers is personal creditor risk. So if you drive out of here tonight, you drive over someone's leg, he's a breadwinner, and he sues you, and you've got assets in your name, it's a potential risk. Highly unlikely, I understand, but it is a risk that's out there. The other quick investment structure is a partnership. So that's something that's actually can be established quite quick by means of a partnership agreement. What we spoke about before is that's typically maybe you and a buddy or a family member, you want to do something quick together. Also suggested the quick flips. The benefit for that is you can actually split income streams. So it becomes a bit easier to allocate vested income streams to the different partners. You have a benefit of maybe easier explaining deductible expenses in your property venture. The negatives is it could be a bit complex in explaining who is the vested party in which income stream, which could trigger queries from SARS and what I've seen in the past. It's not a problem. I don't mind SARS queries. I'm not the auditor myself, but I mean, I've assisted many clients in addressing it without issues. It's just obviously always rather do not want to trigger a query. So I'm just saying the first two suggestions, in the two of them, the partnership, not one of them is a long-term structure that I would advise, But in a partnership, a quick flip, also the suggestion, but just keep your feet or your hands on the pulse of the admin. Yeah. So that is
I just want to ask, I just want clarification, because a lot of people misunderstand partnership as, for instance, if in our transactions, two investors can buy together, for instance, okay? Doesn't have to. So for me, sometimes you may not have all the cash or investment amount, and then we combine two investors. Now, in that case, maybe just to explain that that's not, in our case, like a partnership which he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, you can do through the legal processes the same thing without being partners. That's what Daniel explained now. So a partnership it's like I say, you must have between all of you that's in the partnership, a partnership agreement. If you don't have that, then you are not in a partnership. So
that's what kind of qualifies.
Yes, correct. The reason why I just mentioned it, sometimes two individuals together want to be protected for different reasons between themselves, not actually with whoever they do business, is more between themselves to understand what will happen when. It's like a shareholders agreement of sorts.
And would the deal be done in the personal capacity? In other words, not in a trust or not in a company?
You can do personal or you can do legal entities. So I'm involved in a few partnerships where there's trusts and companies. That's the partnership. So yeah, thanks, Neil. That was a clever one. Not predetermined.
Because there's always divorces, as we know.
Yeah.
There's separation in partnerships. It doesn't work out, so protection mechanisms are important.
No, sure. And I think those type of partnerships are the legacy ones, is the long-term views. So which I will get to now. That's the hold, not necessarily the quick generation of income. So probably the most used one or well-known one currently in South Africa is the company. It's the one PTY Ltd. It's a private company. So you can get it registered at CIPC. It is actually quite easy to do it yourself. The administration thereof is different. That's a different side of things. So you need to keep proper accounting records and do your submissions to SARS. My view for a company, our FICA compliance in South Africa became quite a tedious process. Specifically after the grey listing, it seems like everybody caught a wake up, and now it's like midnight laws and midnight processes going out. Of the two, that the trust and the company, which I will get to, the company is probably the least amount currently of that type of admin compared to the trust. So for that reason, I see long-term holds in a company. And if you want to leverage it, if you want to use bank finance or other types of finance to invest in and keep. So what I mean with, again, long-term hold, I'm talking from your perspective. If you want to have a physical component of a title deed within a venture, that company then is the owner of a title deed in your property venture. I'm personally involved in a few of those with family and friends. It's nice for leveraging. If you want to leverage with anyway, get banks' money or OPM, other people's money to finance your venture. And through that venture, for instance, you can invest if you find the right product in the Assist Group. So again, I just want to create the perspective. So the benefit of a company, again, deductible expenses is easier to explain. Estate planning, it's out of your estate should you pass away. It's out of your personal creditor risk. The negatives is it's a bit more administration. So you now need to do not only your tax submissions as a company that you need to attend or do the tax submissions. And also there's a higher capital gains tax in a company. So that's important, that you must understand that why I say long-term view. So nobody can see the future, but at least if you see an investment opportunity and you feel like I do not foresee anything right now to flip it, then I view that as more of a long-term view. And that's why I say then you can look at companies or trusts. So trust is the last one I want to talk to you about. It's my personal favorite, but there's complexities around it, which depends on each specific client, what they want to achieve out of their property venture. So that gets registered at the Master of the High Court. Unfortunately, most of the masters in South Africa is really, really bad. And I say that with respect. I think there's just a very big backlog and problems in the processes. Cape Town still is all right, but the reason why I say that if and that's part of why trust sort of gets diluted in terms of favor is that it gets long to set up. It's a complex scenario. It's people. The longer you take to set up something, the more, not really doubt, but the more things you think about, and the more you want to bring in the deed and changes, etc., etc. But for me, it is currently, for one reason only, which I'll get to, the ultimate holding vehicle. And for this, I can suggest for financed and cash long-term holds, in terms of property from your perspective as an investment vehicle. Again, deductible expenses, it's easier to do. Estate planning is not in your estate. And financial or personal creditor risk, it's not in your estate to be attached from creditor's side. And the biggest reason why I like trust is the conduit principle. So that's been there since I can remember. And it's the giving trust a fluid scenario of income distribution. So you can either pay tax within the trust, or you can distribute your income straight. So it's just the in and out through the trust. So if you have a very good beneficiary structure in your trust, then you can be very tax efficient in the trust. So it comes down to, people do feel it takes longer and it could be complex, but if you do it right, if you do it wrong, it's also like anything in life, it's not good. But if you do it correct, it's an incredible vehicle for wealth preservation and to create wealth. The negatives, again, is the same. It's more administration. The trust has got the highest capital gains tax rate. So again, which brings me to my point, if you want to bring something into a trust, you must have a long-term view on it. Because if you want to move stuff around quickly, you're going to get a higher capital gains tax rate in the trust. And like I said, the complexity of setting it up. But if you do it right, that's my personal favorite and suggestion for a long-term hold. And yeah, those are the four main vehicles that I wanted to talk about.
Andre, just a question. I see so many people, I think you just touched on it, but the complexity in setting up. If your trust is not set up in the right way, you obviously have challenges, because you can only do certain things if it's set up in a certain way. And I think those type of things are very important, as I understand it.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, the trust is, everything you do is regulated within that trust deed. So it can be changed. I mean, it can be changed, but it's if you have complexities with trustees, and sometimes I see family fights. I mean, and then you can't change it. Now you're locked in. So it's very important. Obviously, you can't regulate everything in life. There are scenarios which could pop up, which you didn't anticipate. But as far as I'm concerned, there are some critical aspects if you do it right, specifically beneficiary structure, trustee structure, then and your deeds. At least you've done 95%. The other 5% is the black swans, you know. So which you can't cater for.
And obviously, if you've started off here on a beautiful journey, bought lots of properties, did a lot of things over the years, and suddenly you realize, like, I'm at a place now where I actually have to rectify things, then there is obviously a few options with that as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's where our paths crossed again, Daniel. I mean, we've also met earlier in my career, and we recently had a client to discuss certain aspects of his structuring. And the thing that I've seen, I mean, and I've got my own independent law firm, is that a lot of clients that I advise on this, they realize maybe a little bit too late, like I mentioned before, and that's why I'm solutions driven, and I don't want to complicate it further. So there's unfortunately not a one size fits all. There's just the best fit for the situation, and you can really it's never too late. There's very clever mechanisms, but it's very subjective on what the property's value are, how high is the growth in the properties. So a lot of that will determine what to do, but you can transfer to a trust or a property. Most of the time we have clients where there's been a long period of growth and the properties are worth quite a lot. And in those scenarios, we use a Section 42 share for asset swap, which is in the Income Tax Act. SARS is happy because you defer a tax rate into the company, which is a higher taxable vehicle for capital gains tax, like I said before. But that's why I also tell clients always, if you want to move that properties, you must have a long-term view on it. So at least, and then you need to do your calculation of estate taxes and your capital gains tax in your estate and a lot of other fees in your estate, and do sort of that analysis and see maybe it's better to do those changes now than leaving an estate that's got no liquidity when you pass on. So yes, there's multiple ways to correct it, and I've done a lot of them, and the clients are happy. I mean, it's possible, yeah.
I think it's not everybody, as we say, we don't necessarily kick off. We have got plans, then we suddenly do great and we buy far more properties than we anticipated and so forth. And then suddenly you find yourself in a place. I think it's important. Andre's detail is there. If you want to get in contact with him, I think also from our side, all our investors, obviously that deals with us from Wealth Assist side. We have various people around us with specialist services, especially when you get to a certain level of type of investors and that type of thing. So I think it's important that we have to provide that to our investors and make sure that they are advised correctly, because it can be costly if you start making those kind of mistakes. So, yeah.
Excellent. They say that there's a saying that says, I know so much. The reason why I know so much is because I've made so many mistakes. Okay, so I think, Daniel, let's unpack. Are we going to unpack the sort of the investment opportunities?
A couple of online questions.
Okay, do you want to deal with some of the Q&As? Thank you for the prompts over there, and also that would also be for the live audience here. We got a live audience and we got an online audience, so please fire away. Let's hear the question. Do you want to read it out?
Yeah. So we have our first question from Thunder, and he asks, "How are you able to get properties at such discounts?"
All right. So Daniel, that one I think is for you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's an interesting one. Look, I think the key is obviously our marketing is very direct. Social media team, those guys standing there behind, which most people of you that's not here can't see, but we thank them for that. We come a long journey. I think the fact that we make impact whilst we're speaking to the clients, and if I can use a very, very practical example, I remember right in the beginning, we used to work from the auction list and contact these clients. And as we phoned them, the guy would tell me, "No, please, you're the 12th guy that phones me." I said, "Can I ask you just one question and then you can put the phone down?" And he says, "Yes." I said, "Have anybody asked you if you want to keep your home?" No. I said, "Okay, can we come and see you?" And then we talked to them. So the difference is everybody came to steal their house. We don't. We come to help. Therefore, we've got a cooperative owner. And then we can start talking about these opportunities. And that is one of the keys. why I believe that we get so many opportunities. Obviously, through our years' experience, we've also built a relationship with institutions, various other lead sources, people who deals in specific parts of the industry, where they actually provide us with these opportunities. Now, just a small tip. If a guy owns a property that's worth $1 million and his debt or his mortgage and his short-term debt together is 1.2 million, do you think I can help him for 75% of market value? I see most people say no. I definitely can. And that's the difference. We make offers to the creditors, we make offers to the bank, they write off certain amounts of money, and on the end of the day, we still buy that property at a below market value. So that's part of the process. We built that relationships over the last 10 years, which obviously in my case, I've been dealing with the banks for more than 35 years in the distressed market. So that obviously helps us too, and I hope that answers that question.
Thank you. That was a very insightful answer. We have our next question from Carol, and she asks, how do you go about negotiating a deal on a distressed property, taking the repairs and maintenance cost into consideration?
Okay, who wants to have a crack at that?
Thank you. From the Assist side, there's a national team of guys, in the country that's been appointed and accredited, the maintenance specialists. So one of the things that you'll see on the website when you evaluate the initial property is that there is a full report. There's a professional evaluator's report, and then there's a maintenance report. And if you go through that thing, you might say at the end of some of those reports that this one I'm not buying. But that's a different discussion for us. Never believe the pictures only. There's quite a few information pieces that's required for you to make a decision in this market. But the reality is there's a detailed report of every crack, every small little thing in that house that is not correct. And what we assess then is actually we go through the process to say, listen, what's the minimum that's required to actually get this prepare the property to go to sale. And the agents will say, listen, if that bath has got the hole in, we will not sell this property. I mean, no woman will come into this bathroom and say, yippee, I want that bath right. And then we actually place it. So the reality is that there is so much detail going in that, and there's costings of different people to subcontractors who will actually come in and do the work on that note. So, so that's how we actually do it.
I can just add there another thing. We've got two types. Obviously, as Gerhard spoke about the recoveries and the on-sale products. The recovery product, we fix the critical maintenance so that there's no more damage type of thing. We're not going to redo your kitchen if you want to keep your home. Use your money to pay off your property is more important. On the on-sales, we obviously do the facelift type of property, fix the minimum spend for the maximum return so that you can have a better proceeds out of the transaction. I think the key is on the question that we had here is if you go out, and this is where a lot of people make mistakes. When you go out, don't thumbsuck your maintenance, please. I do maintenance personally, maybe once in 5 years, every now and then. I'm not talking about small things. I'm talking about revamping a bathroom or it's something that you do. And then I realized that what I bought my bath for last 5 years, when I did it for my whole bathroom, I can only buy my bath now, you see. So the problem is you don't know what the cost is of maintenance. And if you don't know those things, we, for instance, get quotes on every single property, not estimates. We send them out. We get 3 quotes on each property. We've got panels of people around the country that does that for us. They do their quotations. We first check what does it actually cost. So when you buy another deal and it's not with us, get the quotations beforehand. Make sure that you got, don't phone the wrong maintenance guy because that's a headache on its own. So there's a lot of things to take in consideration. And this is why our types of investments that we offer here, taking all those kind of risks out, which you don't have to do and end up in a bad position.
Just like to just make a comment on just the whole maintenance issue and that kind of stuff. You know, if you want to work, I think work alongside Daniel, Gerard, the team over here, it's always a good idea. You know, I say the property investors should always walk the streets, check the property yourself. And there's no better sort of experience than something you've got to look at and you've got to inspect. You can see whether there's a leakage in the roof. You can see whether there's a floor collapsing. And just through, turning on all the taps, flushing all the toilets, switching on all the light switches, you can do your own checks and balances on a property, and immediately you can check to get an assessment of what it is. You can see when there are leaks and that. It's something that is very visible to the eye. The more expensive ways to get a property inspector, obviously, to come in, and they can do that. And it's also not a bad investment either if you are going to invest the property with you. I mean, I remember I did a trip to South African investors that invested in the US. We worked with a distressed guy there. He used to get into distressed properties. He had a list of everything was going on auction, and he did an inspection within 5 minutes because he had to get out of there because there was a little switch which obviously the cops got alerted if he got onto the property, because he wasn't allowed to see the property before it went onto auction. And he did a 5-minute inspection, checked the roof, checked different stuff, and he knew on the back of a cigarette box exactly what that. And it's something that just comes with experience, and it comes with over time. So that's just a little tip I would say for the investor out there, just to add to that.
So we've got 2 more questions.
Yes, please do. Fire away.
Quickly take them. We have Jason asking, are you an authorized FSP?
Definitely. You can't sell property. He's talking about FSP. Sorry, I'll leave Gerard to that one.
Yeah, so this is property regulated by the PPRA, or the Old Estate Agency Affairs Board. They've jacked their game up now. There's quite a few regulations that's coming into there, very strict rules, and you need to be registered with that regulatory body. No? Yeah, so the compliance, and they've got real teeth, and they can pull your license, and there's no other way. This is the FSP side, by the way, is with the FSCA, and that's financial services per se. It's something different.
So what Gerard is saying, we're not a financial services provider. We do property transactions. Every single transaction that we do is a property transaction where you purchase a property. You don't lend money. You don't do all those other things. It's nothing to do with that. It's a property transaction.
And the money's not going into your bank account, Daniel. It's not going into yours.
I'm getting to that. One of the things that we're going to touch on after these questions, and we will jump into a bit of the security and all those types of things.
Excellent. Thank you, Gerard, for that answer. We have lastly, we have Justin, and he's asking, can investors invest into installment sales through you with the intention of owning the property outright through an extended installment sale agreement, 5 to 10 years, at your 75% cost all in?
Look, I think one of our keys of our organization is we have various solutions that we do, which is not listed here, because you get clients with specific needs. And one of those needs, which he's talking about, is, for instance, the elderly people. There's a lot of elderly people that owns lots of property, don't owe any money on it, but they actually don't want to pay the rates and taxes and all those things anymore. So it's called typical like a reverse mortgage type of thing. It's not the same, but then you can do an installment sale on that. It's typical type of transactions that you can do. Most of our clients, and this is a very good example, is some of our investors. Yeah, I think Mr. and Mrs. Kendall, don't mind if I mention their names. They've been invested with us for probably, I'm not sure, 6 years. I'm not 100% sure. And one of the transactions that we just done recently, they actually had a meeting with us today where they purchased the property with the purpose of the client repurchasing their property in the long term. But in that case, the client actually came back to them and said to us, listen, can you actually sell this property on to them. They want to keep the property, and the tenant or the previous owner actually wants to stay in the property and we did a transaction and they just kept the property. So very similar to on an installment sale. If there's some default, that type of thing, there is always in our agreements what we call an option to actually hold that property. You pay some additional amount in, because we're not going to, if you buy it at 50% of market value, going to leave it at 50%, then we normally would do it for 85% of market value, but you still have a property that you bought far below market value. And on the end of the day, that tenant then agrees to that to become a long-term tenant for you. And that type of thing, you've got a track record by that time, how they pay, like in their case, it's more than 2 years. And they're happy because they never skip the payment. That's just that they're in the position where they actually created some additional debt which they was not supposed to do, and now can't take transfer of the property in that case.
Thank you. That's all for now.
Okay. Unless we have questions on the floor, is there anybody in particular that has anything they'd like to ask? Anybody?
We very much into the South African market, but some investors, I think, would also be interested in overseas, etc., etc. And I think, like some of them could be like me, skeptical about just going here, there, and everywhere, especially if you don't know. But if you are a investor and you, for example, you experience a situation that we have here in South Africa, what's the possibility of doing that in the future overseas, so that we can get currency from there as well?
Yeah. Look, there are operators that we actually work with for offshore investments. There's different types of investments. The offshore game, I mean, obviously it's quite popular at the moment. And I've worked with quite a lot of different vendors in different countries, from the US to the UK, in particularly those two countries, where UK is by far the number one biggest investment destination for South African investors. You would find that people buying lifestyle in areas like Mauritius and Europe, and they've had all these golden visa type things in Portugal and other areas of Europe, Spain as well. But what people don't realize, I mean, taxes, it gets complicated when you invest overseas. And interesting, I just want to share a story. In 2011, Scott Picken, myself, and Brendan Brown, we went to the US. We visited, I think it was 9 states in 11 days. And our sole job was to hunt for properties for South Africans in different areas. And we landed off in an area, Atlanta. Now, at that time, the rand dollar was R8.25 to the US. It's now at 20 or just under 2019. Everybody was worried about, no, but it could improve to 7. And this is 2011. It's not far, it's a long time ago. The interesting story about all these investors, we've got 200 investors involved that invested in Atlanta from 85,000 USD up to about 200,000 USD. Interesting thing was that everybody made their money not on the rental returns, but on the exchange rate and on the rand dollar over that period of time. There were a lot of defaults also on rentals, and they say, the rules and regs are different over there. It's not. And I'm talking about the US in particular now. In terms of distressed markets, yes, they're all there's different products which are available for UK operators. We can buy at very low levels into areas which are sort of state-owned houses, which you can start off at like £80,000. You can also invest in park homes, which is prefabricated homes for a monthly 10% return in sterling, but you need to put on R1 million. But the distressed deals. If you want to be distressed, I suggest you set up a limited company in the UK and you go and walk the streets and knock on the door yourself. That's the only way. Otherwise, I have there's such a wonderful Afrikaans saying, ver van jou goed na aan jou skade. And you know what? You've got to be close up. You've got to be able to look at the property. You've got to look at the owner. You've got to be there. You've got to walk the streets yourself. So if you want to do the same thing that Daniel are doing there, I don't know of anybody in the UK that's doing that. I really don't know. But my suggestion is, if you want to veer into that, is rather do it yourself, because you can be in control of that.
Agree with Neil. I've seen many of these things, and I'll be honest with you, most of them really only made their money on the, as you say, on the exchange rate. We are obviously, our strategy is to, UK is the next one. But the distress market is completely different. The laws in those countries, I did the research on the UK already, Scotland already, which is kind of well-established property markets and things like that. Your challenge with the market there, for instance, a simple, like not an installment sale, but a recovery product that we do here is unlawful there. You're not allowed to sell a property which you purchased from a property owner. You're not allowed to lease it to him, not even lease it back to him. Simple example in Scotland. Because people misuse people's misfortune too much, and the law just kicked in and said, no, we can't allow this anymore. So there, for instance, an installment sale is the method to do that. And then they have installment sales, and it works very similar to ours. So, but those type of things is things that we have to, you really have to be careful. Laws are different, things are different. So if you don't have an organization where you can actually put your money in that place, when you are very secure in who you're dealing with, what did we say? All cycles, you can make good returns here. Okay, it's just a good example. So why would you go there if you don't have to take that kind of chances? And the grass is always greener on the other side. It really is. Okay, until you get there, there's also a pool on the grass. Okay.
Great. I think, Daniel, we're getting to the wrap up of this section, and then I think we'll handle the Q&As again at the end. So, Daniel, I know you got some deals, so all over to you.
Before I touch on the deals, I just want to introduce one of our new products. I think it's very, very important. And as we mentioned in the beginning, most of you know about rent to buys, typically that type of thing. Now, what we have, our product is called Assist to Own. What we do in this case is, as if you're an investor, for instance, we buy those properties again at 75% of market value. But in this case, we buy it from developers in bulk and of people, typically the type of guy who wants to leave the country and quickly want to sell, is a good businessman, so you don't misuse his misfortune. He knows actually what he's doing. And he wants to sell it for that. They just want to get rid of it quickly, and they get fearful or whatever the reasons are for those motivations that they have. And we buy those properties at below market value. Then in that case, we sell it on an assist to own basis, very much like our recovery. Just to jump into it quickly. So in that case, you'll also purchase the property in the same way. You'll take transfer of that property. They will then, the new assist to own tenant, that's one of those 10 million, the 435,000 that can actually recover in a year and a half, those are your client base. Now, if I say that, you can think for yourself automatically, 435,000 clients, potential clients, obviously, area, they get less in the area, but there's so many that you can actually sell it far easier for the full sales price very quickly to an assist to own client, because he normally don't have an opportunity to actually own a home. Now you're making it possible for him to own a home. We check like a normal recovery. We make sure that his affordability is there, everything is there, and that he can pay actually. And the typical, then in that case, as soon as his credit score is then fixed, we, on the end of the day, he will then take up a mortgage, and we will assist him with that. We also have got a mortgage origination arm in our business, so we do all those pre-approvals for our investors, as well as obviously those type of clients. We monitor them until they're in the position to actually take transfer of that property, and the investor, as with the recovery, just make the same kind of money as on that other side. Okay. Then I'm just gonna jump through a few slides here and show, I think we just want to touch on a bit of the risk mitigation. I think it's very important for our investors. On the end of the day, we're talking about the type of investors, how we choose them, the research you guys spoke about. This is all the research that we do, making sure that we cover that. We do a professional valuation on all recoveries. If it's an on-sale product, you'll have the professional valuation plus 3 specialist agents in that area. Now, guys, that's where it goes wrong. What's a specialist estate agent? We just found the first guy who's got to add up or a board up in the area. No. There's a specific way that you should ask that. Ask them, what did they sell for the last 6 months? If it's one, he's not an area specialist. Don't let his agency get the sole mandate, all those type of things, please. If he knows what he's doing, he probably sold 3 or 4 properties or whatever in that timeline, and he understands what's happening in the market. Now, what we normally do is they don't do valuations, they do assessments, as we call it. So those estate agents will have at least 3 of those in the area. So you know exactly, this is the variances, this is more or less what I can expect of that. Then the property management side, we all know, but we keep a 3 months deposit always on trust during this term as well. And then we've got a risk committee consisting of attorneys, CAs, property specialists, maintenance specialists, all these kind of guys. It's about 6 or 7 people that approve every single transaction before we will go into that. And that helps you to make less mistakes. And that's the key on the end of the day. Then due diligence, as I said, we do a proper structural due diligence on every single property. Obviously, throughout 10 years, and we are fortunate that I've been in the distress market, and a few of our other parties that is there for many years in the distress market. We know what the pitfalls are and where we can actually do that, sort that kind of things out. And our contracts have obviously been tested over the time period. Then obviously life insurance. If any of the parties, if you're in your personal name or the other party who is in trouble has now life insurance, if he dies, what happens to that transaction? And that type of thing. So there's insurance, property insurance, obviously, as well. That's part of that. I mean, we all know property is a proper asset class, and that will be your underlying security on every deal. And then, very importantly, as Gerard touched on, we do a owner's research, because you don't know. For instance, just a simple thing which most people don't know. If you buy a property from anybody today, and tomorrow the attorney can back me up on this one, if within 6 months, if he's technically insolvent, and his estate or the trustee of his estate, if he sequestrates himself, can reverse that transaction. Okay, most people don't even know that. You can't. So in our case, we review the seller's situation to make sure he's not technically insolvent. We paid the price on that one many years ago, so we learned the hard way. Okay, so that gives you just a bit of the stuff that we do on the end of the day to make sure that you do an investment that is secure. Okay. Great. Just quickly about the money. Very important. Where does your money flow? I think that's very important for any real estate investor. Don't just pay your money over to any person on the end of the day. Your money goes into a general investment account in the attorney's trust account, what we call a deposit holding attorney's account. Then from there on, it flows to, let's say your transaction, you selected now a specific transaction. Then in that case, the money will flow to that stays in the trust account, but it gets allocated to that new deal. So in that case, then the money will flow from there to the actually conveyancing attorney's trust account from there on. And then it gets paid out and distributed according to the agreement. Paying the banks, paying whatever we have to. Then when the person repurchases the property, same story, the money flows to the conveyancing account, back from that to the deposit holding attorney's trust account, back to your general investment account. And remember that general investment account is a market think account in your own name. Okay. And then from there on, the profit gets paid out according to, and every single payment that's made from that trust account to anybody else, anywhere else, Andre will tell you that as well. You have to have a written, proper attorney will have a written instruction from you as a real estate investor. That's the only thing that's a bit of a job for you. Yeah. You have to send every now and then, Neil, you have to send a form through to just us make some payments and that type of thing. But so you also have to participate a bit. Okay. So, yeah, so that's the story there. Then I'm just going to jump into showing you guys a typical kind of the way to how our information work and so forth. So I'm going to use a typical transaction. Let's just find my mouse. Okay, so when you registered with us as a real estate investor, you'll actually get to this page without being registered, by the way. And then you're going to get to the point where you can say, I want to see what is available investment opportunities. Now, unfortunately, if you, I think Tana must help me right here, but if you're registered, only registered, then you can't start going into the different type of investment opportunities or see the products itself. But if you are, and you will get a certain code, then you can enter a transaction. Now, I know you're going to tell me this is a bit too good to be true, but it's actually a fact. It's a transaction that was listed, I think, yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah. So every new transaction, if you're an investor with us and you are then you'll receive an email. First of all, maybe if you asked for SMS, you'll get an SMS saying, yes, there's some new products, whatever the case may be. So in this case, there's a transaction. You can actually buy this property at 14% of market value. I don't think you've ever heard that often. Okay. But this is actually true. It's not a lie. So it's we have got people that's already reserved it, as you can probably imagine. So, but this is a typical on-sale transaction, one of our installment sale breather transactions. So the property get bought for the 231, which market value is 1.6 million, and obviously the return will vary. Then, if it takes 12 months to sell this property, then it will be 15.95%. It's slightly lower than our averages. The reason why, because the risk is so substantially lower, because it's 14% of market value. And then you have, and if we do it in 9 months, your return will be 21% per annum. So that gives you an idea. So then you click on the link. Now this is important. So, I quickly have to do all this homework before I can actually buy this property. Okay. Because if you have to go and do your homework. If you normally would have done this, let's say this was something that was in the market. Now, first of all, you have the photos. Don't worry. So here you'll see, this is the typical information, which is all available, already done for you. You don't have to go and do it. Okay. So if you want to see, okay, but what is the investment information here? On the left-hand side, you can see actually all those figures again, which we saw on the outside. Here you'll see, okay, we want to see what's the valuation of this property. And there's a professional valuation company, national company, doing also some of the bank's valuations for them. So it's a reputable company. And you can go down this valuation sheet. There's not, it's probably going to take a bit more than half an hour, but telling you every single thing that you want to know about this investment and the value of it, where it's situated, what previous sales there was, what the photos look like inside of the property, your the actual sales in the area, what is available in the market comparing to that same property with the same descriptions. Now, if I ask you to do that homework, that's going to take you a few days if you do it properly. Okay. Here you get everything is actually done for you and on your behalf. The average sales in the area, the number of sales in the area, all the things that you get on the, what do you call it, the Lightstone and all those type of things as well. So you can make a proper decision, and then look at this, all the different, what is your buyer's crazy market and all those type of things, what's your distressed market, values, all those type of things. So everything is available for you to go and view it yourself and make a sound decision if this is a good investment. Okay. Then, let me just get back here. So then you can run to, oh, what does the property look like? Same story. We do the same, use the same company. They have got various inspectors doing the inspections on these properties. Every single man, you know, I remember one video that they actually gave us one day, where there was a hole in a cupboard. And they actually photographed the hole in the cupboard. Said, guys, that's beautiful. A lot of detail, but that's what they do. They do a proper job. And here you can see every single thing there. So if we're going to do some maintenance on this property, which in this case, there's very little that we're supposed to do. But in that case, we'll have 2 quotations that you'll have on there as well. So, or 2 or 3. If it's under 50, it's 2 quotations. If it's under 250,000, 3 quotations. If it's above that, anything above 250, we'll have a project manager that actually gets involved, and they will have their project set out there in detail so that you know exactly. Because otherwise you end up like one of our lovely investors here, where we let the owner do the valuations and the maintenance right in the beginning, Jeffco, and we're still paying for that one. Okay, so so it's important that you actually do it right, otherwise you pay the price in that type of situation. But that just give you a very good idea of what is it actually all entail. Thank you.
Right. Are there any more questions online there, Christian? Do you see nothing? Are there any more questions from the audience? All quiet. Are we standing between you and some good snacks that are coming over there?
Is there any
Well, I think maybe what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little wrap up here. So Gerard, maybe give us your little 1-minute takeaway for everybody. Your final thoughts, give people something that they can take away with them and say, hey, you know, this is what I can do. Your final wrap.
So still on the construction, but I did a couple of figures, and I can tell you now that I said to the CFO, listen, if these are correct, you know, it's really amazing. So I can tell you now that if you want to do a buy-to-let, especially here in Cape Town, and the shortfall on a monthly basis, and the fact that you're financially gearing yourself for the next 10 years, which means you are exposed to the banks until the break-even point. And that's typically now the properties that I did was 9, 10, and 11 years. So the irony of if you can do the same type of transaction in this model, you will most likely, after 10 years, have at least doubled your money. There's no doubt. It's actually a bit more in the initial one, but we'll get those calculations audited. But the reality is that exactly that, because you are able to realize your investment profits and keep on investing it and turning it. So from my side, you know, go to the website. You'll see there on the top right, get started. Register yourself, put up a one-on-one consultation, and let's just look at your current portfolio, bringing that into the perspective. We actually do an investment plan for you individually, and then we actually project it for you to actually see with your current portfolios and the new ones. I call it a diversification into this segment of the market, and then you can see where you will be in the next 10 years. And income-wise, the whole tutti. So it's real value. Please go and book an appointment. Thank you.
Great, Andre, your final wrap.
So I was not really prepared for this one. So let me just think while I speak. So I will go back to maybe the lessons that I've learned through the eyes of my clients, and that is that it's rather do the right structure, think what you need, what your views are, and rather get the right advice. Even if it's now, even if you're in the middle of your journey, you can change. Don't leave. A lot of people leave all those legal, let's call it administration, for last. And unfortunately, a lot of people's beneficiaries actually sit with the problem. So yeah, rather try and get it right. And it's never too late, or you're never too far down the process. So that would be my advice.
Great. Very good advice.
Okay, Daniel, your final.
Yes, yeah,
thoughts?
I think I want to ponder rather on the why. That's my heart in the organization. Apart from you guys making all the money as well, it's great. We want to help you create wealth, but on the other side, we also want to help people. And if we can combine those things in a win-win, there's not a lot of people that offer that kind of product that makes you sleep so much better whilst you're making good money and good security on your transactions.
Daniel Lombard, Andre van Zyl, and Gerard van der Westhuizen, thank you very much. I think they'd all deserve a round of applause. We give them. And Neil Peterson, on behalf of Wealth Assist and Real Estate Investor, there's a question. There's a question.
Thank you. So on behalf of Justin, his question is, do you register a prospectus or do you get around this by creating JVs?
None of the two. We're getting well, yeah, no, let's stop using the word getting around laws, because we're not getting around laws. We're getting we do transactions within the South African property laws. That's what we do. So you can buy any property from any person legally. You in South Africa, you still fortunately allowed, not like in Scotland, where you can rent it back to a client. Legally, you can sign an option agreement with them to purchase that property. You can register it actually on the title. So, and that's what we do. We register a first right of refusal over the title to protect the real estate owner in the process whilst the property is on your name as the investor. So it's all property transaction related and nothing around any laws, but within the laws.
Great stuff. And on that note, ladies and gents, I know you want to druk die knoppie over there because there's one more. So Real Estate Investor Mag, for those who got your phones, you can go to rei.co.za. That's our latest edition. We spoke about Rail Levitt. There's a lot of video and stuff that's in it. That's the publication. It's monthly. It's free, everybody. Comes out once a month, rei.co.za. You can download it onto your tablet, onto your phone, or wherever, read it from there. And we also have webinars and that kind of stuff. And you can also subscribe to our newsletter and everything as well. So we stay up to date with what's happening in the industry. So wonderful having you all. And my last thoughts to everybody is, when is the best time to invest in property? You know that's the most common question I get over the years. And in 2007, we started the magazine. And the best time is always now. It doesn't matter whether the market is going up or down. In fact, the best time was 10 years ago.
Yes.
The second best time is now. So, ladies and gents, on that note, thank you very much for your participation and for listening to us. And I'm sure we're going to have some more of these events going forward. There's certainly be more webinars. What is the volgende stap? Everybody goes.
Yes, please. Guys, and this is not really, it's not a thing for selling the magazine. It's there's no sale. Okay, so if you don't have it, you actually you have to reconsider, because you need to have the magazine. There's another reason why I want you to actually follow it, especially the newsletters, is because you know about the events. Okay,
They have events. Literally, I'm talking about powerful events. If you're an investor, make sure you get the newsletter so that you can actually see when these events. I mean, the discussion with Rail I really enjoyed it. I'll be honest with you, it was really a good one. I know him personally, and I walked a long road with him, and I actually, I asked a lot of questions afterwards, and now I understand a lot more. But it also helps you to understand a lot of other things. And if you read that magazine, definitely listen. You get lots of information there, which is not daily shared with you. Okay. And if you want to be a property investor, if that is what your investments are, is you've got a passion for property, and obviously making money with it, then get the Real Estate Investor magazine and get the seminars are like Wednesdays and Thursdays. I think there's quite a lot, and they just for that hour between 12 and 1 or whatever the timeline is, and it's literally something that you can take a quick break and empower yourself with that, upskill yourself. I mean, I'm in the property industry for nearly 40 years, and I learned from those things. So I think everybody can. Thank you.
Thursday, 12 o'clock, we've got a talk about offshore investments, house of multiple occupancies, and we've got 2 specialists on the ground. They actually your wealth is actually in the UK, but on the house of multiple occupancies. So there they are. They're your team on the ground. I mean, they do exactly what they do, and that's on Thursday at 12. And next week, I've been very fortunate. I'm the MC for a big conference up in Johannesburg on Wednesday and Thursday. It's a residential and property development and investment conference. We even got the Minister of Human Settlements there, Mamaloki Kubai. She's going to be there. And we've got 50 speakers, and we're talking about the solutions, how to get exploring houses for all. And we're looking at the affordable housing, social housing, and we even got an awards evening. We're talking about residential investment. We're talking about student accommodation. Those are the sort of the hot spots at the moment. And that will also be available online on video. We actually replay all our webinars and everything. So there's so much data, so much info that you can get online for free. For free, sommer gratis. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. I think there's snacks and drinks, and if you want to chat and interact, please do so. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for our online audience for being so patient. All 2,000 of them. How many was it? I'm not quite sure, but yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.